I mentioned before that my grandmother was terrified of the nursing home. Like, she was very outspoken about how horrible they were, how the conditions were. She'd always say, they'll whip you and take your stuff. But she didn't learn this in her years spent in a nursing home. Just one person told her what it was like, and that became how all nursing homes were. And I remember they watched, it came out in the 80s, it was Return to Mayberry, and she got wind that Frances Bavier, however you say her name, that played Aunt Bee, was in a nursing home, and she's just like, oh, it bothered her greatly. So whenever anyone would get put into a nursing home, more on that later, she would just always be like, well, there wasn't a thing wrong with him. Because there was a guy, a great uncle, that they put him in a nursing home, and my grandma was like, there wasn't a thing wrong with him. And my dad was like, well, I'm sure his physician son might have a few opinions on that, because I'd like to think he knows better than other people. And then her uncle, who's not much older than her, she said they took his car away and they put him in a nursing home. Wasn't a thing wrong with him, but she didn't even know. She just, as soon as she heard that, she went straight to the worst thing, which is what people do sometimes. But through the years, she was one of those people that just had a lot of drive. She couldn't stay still. She was always working, doing too much, and she'd fall a lot. And it happened, and my dad's just like, I know what's going to happen. The day she has to go to the nursing home, she's just going to be screaming at me that there's not a thing wrong with me. Y'all put me here. And because she fell and broke her hip, and she recovered pretty well. And then 3 months later, she fell and broke her other hip, and that she couldn't get around as well after that. Because she would fall a lot, and she kept the phone with her at all times, because she would fall like outside. I remember one time she called us. She'd fallen in the carport, and me and my dad had to drive like 15 minutes to come help her up. And my dad was like, for somebody that was terrified of the nursing home, she seems to be doing everything in her power to end up there. But thankfully, she never did. Although I don't think she really understood, like, she lived with my uncle. My cousin lived maybe a mile away, and my dad, my sister, and myself lived 5 miles away. So we all lived close by. So she had a support structure that made it possible. But she didn't really see it that way. She's just like, I don't want to go to the nursing home, because if we'd all lived 2 hours away, that's the size of it. I see it all the time. Because my cousin's husband, she talked about, he had to move his grandmother into a nursing home. And it's bad. I think his grandmother's still alive, even though she's over 100. So, good for her. And then you got my other grandmother. She had an older brother who ended up he got moved to a nursing home. Because my other grandmother was big on precision of language. She's like, no, you put an item on a shelf, you move someone to a nursing home. And I guess it's kind of an important distinction, because putting someone there implies that, well, I'm tired of him. Let me put him there. Like you put a dog in the Humane Society. Yeah, it just has a better ring to it when they move. And that grandmother, she ended up in I think assisted living / nursing home. And she was cool with it. I think it was even her idea, because nobody lived close to her. All her kids lived a good hour and a half plus away. Because my dad's even admitted, he's like, look, when it becomes time, just take me to a place near a golf course, because he's kind of accepting of that fact. But I mean, I've seen some bad ones. I went with, because my grandmother might have had a fair point, because we went to a nursing home with a youth group to do something, and the youth minister was in my group and somebody else, and we go to try to open the door, and one of the residents tries to open it, and he can't get out because he wants to leave, and an assistant comes in, opens the door, and the guy just starts crying, and the youth minister turns to me and he says, "I don't know if we can cheer these people up with our singing, but I don't know." And it was kind of depressing. But some of them are pretty nice. And my dad has pointed out, he's like, people line up to sue nursing homes. Like, there are attorneys, like my uncle, whose whole job was to, like, this is all he did was represent nursing homes in lawsuits. So the whipping you and taking your stuff deal really is not true, because they'll have a lawsuit in a minute, because nursing homes are not cheap. $5-6 grand a month, and say they have 50 residents, it's a fair bit of money, and they gotta have insurance. They'll get sued really quickly. So I think my grandmother's fears were misplaced, but if you don't know about something, it's only as good as what somebody told you. Like, I have friends that are pharmacists, but I have very little understanding of it, so I only know what they told me, because what the hell do I know about pharmacy? So I don't think nursing homes are as bad as she thought, but I'm just glad she never lived to end up in one.